Looking for something a little different? A scary story, perhaps? Well, then you've come to the right place. In this short story by D.M. Pearson, we'll discover that home ownership is not all it's cracked up to be. Ready? Here we go. Foreclosure by D.M. Pearson. The sound of the gravel crunched under the tires of my car as I drove up the long, winding driveway to the derelict house. It was a late December afternoon, and the incessant misting rain covered the windshield with winter rime. The windshield wipers clicked in time with the guttural growl of the engine, which clearly needed a new muffler. I parked the car in front of the garage and turned off the engine. A striking silence descended, a silence that I had never experienced before. It produced a dulling of the senses like I was underwater. I took the keys out of the ignition and they jangled loudly as I put them in my coat pocket. I popped the door open, got out, and shut the door. Chunk. The sound echoed across the scrubby, weed-choked lawn. A weather-beaten for sale sign stood in the middle and rattled in the wind. The house was in terrible condition and looked much worse in person than in the photos that the realtor, Mr. Snell, had sent me. The peeling brown paint hung in lank sheaths from the siding. The window screens were shredded, and a large blue tarp-covered part of the roof anchored with bricks. The drive from Seattle had been one full of elation. A new start, a new home, a new life. After buying the house, I was on an extreme budget, but I knew that I could make it work. I had to make it work. But now, standing in front of my new home, my aspirations were crushed as I surveyed the dilapidated building. The reality of the situation struck home, and tears choked my throat. Maybe it's nicer on the inside, I lied to myself. The last 6 months of my life had been an absolute shit show. Divorce, laid off, and the illness of my last living family member. Not even a week after John had filed for divorce, my mother had suffered a stroke and was now living permanently in a rehabilitation facility in a small town in eastern Washington state. With my previous professional and personal dreams extinguished, I'd thought the move would be a good thing. In an abrupt fit of momentum, I'd bought the house online with the remaining cash that I had, scheduled the movers to pick up my items from storage and deliver them to the new house, checked out of the hotel that I'd been staying in, and drove east. Unease churned my stomach at the sight of the place. I imagined I'd be so much farther in my life by the age of 38. Damn it, I muttered. I'd bought the house for an extremely low price because it was under foreclosure. I'd bought it sight unseen, which I knew was a risk. But what choice did I have? As I walked past the garage, I noticed that the windows had once been painted black, but were now cracked. I walked to the front door and turned the doorknob. It was unlocked. I opened it and stepped inside. An intense odor of mold and the foul sweetness of decay assaulted my nose. A raucous cawing issued from the front yard. I turned and looked through the open doorway to see a crow perched on the sign. It squawked several times and then stared menacingly. I frowned. I'm not a superstitious person, but even I was uncomfortable with the foreboding atmosphere of the house. That's not good, I whispered. A lone, primer gray car slowly trundled past the house, but didn't stop. From the interior of the house came a freezing wind that rushed past me and slammed the door shut. I gasped and saw the icy tendrils of my breath coalesce into crystals that hovered in the gloom. In some distant corner, something large shifted and crept along the floor toward me. Creak. I felt the hair on the back of my neck raise. I was terrified and couldn't turn around, so I just stared at the closed door. After a few seconds, I panicked and reached out to turn the doorknob, but it was locked. I was still fervently trying to turn the doorknob when a hot, acrid breath touched my neck. It scorched my nostrils with a pungent, sulfurous odor. I held my breath and stopped moving. The floor groaned loudly behind me, and my eyes bulged as I saw breath billowing around me, breath that was not my own. My lungs burned from holding my breath for too long. I took static breaths and yanked on the doorknob in the wrong direction, unable to remember if the door opened in or out. A rasping sound, almost like the hoot of an owl, sounded loudly throughout the house. I let go of the doorknob and cowered from the intensity. After the shriek had abated, I turned around to see how my life would surely end. On the opposite wall, an Arctic wind poured through a broken window in the living room and doused the house in a frigid embrace. But there was no sign of any living thing. Convinced that I'd just experienced a ghost, I reached again for the doorknob, found it unlocked, and violently wrenched the door open. I sprinted out of the house and toward my car, hands in pockets awkwardly seeking the keys. After a moment of clumsily fumbling to unlock my car, I was finally sitting safely inside. I locked all the doors and then looked wildly around me through all the windows. I didn't see any intruders or animals. I was alone. I inhaled a long breath and exhaled slowly as I turned the keys in the ignition. Silence. I tried again, but my car was dead. Here I was, out in the middle of nowhere with a broken-down car, no money, and a haunted house. I fished my phone out of my purse. No signal displayed petulantly on the digital screen. Of course, there's no signal, just my luck. I looked at my phone again and saw that it was 4:07 p.m. It would be night soon. Where was I going to go? I couldn't go walking along a road at night, a female alone, in some rural area all the way back to town. Even if I got there, all the stores would probably be closed. I didn't even know where the police station was. And what would I say? I saw a ghost in the hovel of a house that I'd just bought because I had nowhere else to go. It was in that moment that I felt shame at letting my life get so out of control. I shook my head in frustration, and tears burned my eyes. I hit the steering wheel with my fists and beeped the horn by accident. In response, a tall, jagged shadow seeped from behind the garage's side wall toward my car. The figure had a stooped, hopping gait. Its movements were unnatural and eerie. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. As it moved closer to the driver's door, I moved into the passenger seat, clutching the keys and my phone to my chest, like they were my lifelines. The shadow crept closer to the car, and my stomach cramped with anticipation. My eyes darted to the front door of the house, and I wondered if I might be safer there than in my car. When I looked back toward the driver's door, the shadow had disappeared. I breathed a sigh of relief and tried to convince myself that I had only seen a shadow made from the looming trees that towered over the house. I could feel my heart rate and breathing slowly go back to normal, but not quite. I knew the moving van wouldn't arrive for another 3 days, so I needed to figure out if I should stay in the house or in the car. What's the worst thing that could happen? That I slept in the car for a couple of nights? I decided that I'd slept in worse places. I felt the raw edge of cold through the floorboards. It was getting cold fast, and it was almost completely dark outside now. I grabbed my overcoat that I'd thrown in the back seat. Bundled up in the heavy woolen garment, the car seemed a far better option than the house. I closed my eyes for a moment and took another deep breath, trying to regain my senses, when something knocked on the passenger's side window. I jumped and cried out in surprise. Above me loomed a man in his 80s with willowy limbs, a bald head, watery blue eyes, and oddly pointed teeth. "Hello. You must be the new owner." "I'm the agent that sold you the property, Mr. Snell. We spoke on the phone," he said, in a deep and breathy voice. I smiled wanly, but I didn't want to roll down the car window, even though I'd spoken with him over the phone when I'd bought the place. I looked back at where the shadow had been originally standing near the garage. I blinked slowly and asked through the glass, "Sorry, I didn't see you earlier. Did you just see something over there?" The piercing sound of scratching along the length of my car confronted my ears. I looked back to where Mr. Snell was standing near the passenger window, but he was gone. I swiveled in my seat, trying to see him. Finally, I saw him through the back window. He walked slowly to the driver's side, and I heard the scratching continue as he stalked around the car. He stopped in front of the driver's window. He awkwardly leaned down to look directly at me through the glass and displayed his crooked smile. "Yes, I've seen odd things here too. In fact, there are all kinds of things out here in these woods. Old things. If you're afraid of shadows, then maybe you should go inside," Mr. Snell said, and gestured to the front door of the house. His fingers ended in black talons. I shook my head no. I heard him pulling on the driver's side door handle. Finding it locked, he grimaced, and I saw the flash of prominent incisor and canine teeth from behind emaciated lips that were pulled taut across his skull. His once blue eyes were now black and burned into me as he said, "Besides, you can't stay out in the car all night. That would be a miserable way to spend an evening. It gets very cold here. In fact, this place has seen some of the coldest winters on record." My chin wobbled and I started to gasp as I half crouched in the seat. "No, no," I yelled through the glass at him. Mr. Snell smiled broadly and said, "Don't worry. We know how to handle newcomers. Here, take my hand," he said as he punched his fist through the glass and reached into the car. As his hand latched onto my throat, my shrieking was drowned out by a chorus of owls hooting madly into the new moon sky. The end. You can find more of D.M. Pearson's work on Amazon.